Hey everyone, welcome back to Aurelia City in City Skylines. In the previous part, I mentioned that in the coming episodes, we will move away from the river that cuts the city in half to work more on the places on the edge of the city, roughly between the airport and the waterfront project we did recently. So we started that with the futuristic underground public transport depot and hub in the last episode, and today we will continue expanding the city in this general area. We will connect the depot with the airport and the high-density places built some time ago. We will also do some landscaping, very important landscaping, that will allow us to complete a big chunk of the map here. But more on that in just a second. Let's go. But before that, I'm going to show you something that I actually built for some previous episodes, but I haven't showed you the time-lapse yet because this is something more relevant to what we are going to be doing today. So this is the road that we have also seen in the previous episode of the tram depot, and these are the tracks that are going from the airport into that tram depot area. So if you remember the last episode, we did also the intersection with the intersection marking tools on the side of the depot where the tracks were just leaving the main road and going into the depot. So this is exactly the same road, and these are the tracks that are going off into that terminus station in front of the airport. This was pretty much the first instance of me building like a very detailed intersection with the intersection marking tools. So this is kind of an old footage of the time lapse, but I really just wanted to show you this because it's pretty much going to be in the middle of what we are going to be building today, and I didn't really want to show that before in some previous episodes. So I'm using some old version of the IMT at this point, probably not even having enough experience with the mod as well. So probably doing some things that I've kind of learned not to do or to improve. Also, that the red pattern that is going underneath the tracks is kind of fading into the black, which is something that was fixed in the latest patches of the IMT. So it's now nice and red all the way on this entire intersection. So it's not really an intersection, right? It's just a connection for the tracks to join the main road. But I really like these kinds of connections, and especially now that we have that node controller mod, which was pretty new back when I was doing this. It's just amazing that you can do these kinds of merges between the tracks and the wide roads, so that it's going to look very, very good. The corner for the tracks is going to be very smooth, and I don't know what else to say. It's just absolutely amazing looking. And as you can see, I also did some detailing with the procedural object grasses and some curbs there. So it's just looking really good. And I think that this is what I did recently. I was just doing these cables and also some of the cable holders as well. So it's kind of nice and complete. But anyway, back to the modern footage, or sorry, the recent footage that I did for today's episode and what's going to be pretty much the topic of today's episode. So we are going to do the landscaping, and what exactly is it going to be? I'm going to build lakes. I'm going to build 2 lakes that are going to be on the edge of this highway, which is the highway that just goes pretty much parallel to the airport terminal and towards the downtown of the city. I already knew that I wanted to have some sort of lakes in here, because if you remember, when we were building that plaza on the waterfront, I did the small river or the small stream that was going through the plaza, and I already mentioned that maybe I do have some plans, some justification for the river, so that it's just not going to be like a one-time project. It's not just going to be going out of nowhere. So the little stream from the plaza is actually aiming in this direction. So it is coming from these lakes, and these lakes are just going to be here to just fill the space and allow me to have more area finished without actually needing to fill them with some probably high density buildings to basically form an edge of the high density areas. And it's also going to look good. It's going to look interesting. It's going to be a different color in the area because all these high density areas are looking kind of whitish, gray or something. So there's going to be some water around it with all the trees as well. So that's just going to be looking very nice. I only did the landscaping at first, and then I really wanted to just continue with some infrastructure and maybe some of these blocks as well to have a better idea how the lakes need to be, like how big I need to make them, where the landscaping is going to end and stuff like that. Right now we are back with that intersection, with that merge of those tracks, because right after the merge there's going to be a tram station and also a bus station, which is basically going to be a bus terminus station. And this is exactly the line that we have seen pretty much throughout this area, this general area of the city, because that's the line that goes from that very old, well, not really very old, but the public transport hub, the first one that we did closer to the river. But it's also the one that we have seen in the previous episode with that new transport hub, because that new transport hub near the depot is actually the second terminus for this line, and this is going to be the first one. So it's going to be a nice and finished line of the buses in the city. So you can already tell that this is going to be the line that I'm going to do the first person ride for. So you can stay tuned for that. It's actually going to be very, very soon, or sooner than you might think, because a lot of these areas around this line are mostly done. So it's just going to be a couple of episodes before we are finally going to see the first bus rides of the series, right? And obviously more are going to follow as we are going to progress further with the finishing touches of some parts of the city. But obviously it's going to be mostly buses at first, because those are shorter, but trains and trams are going to follow some time later. Anyway, enough about that. We are now going to just continue building some of these high density blocks around here. So I already kind of started with that. This bus road is pretty much going straight all the way towards the river, and all around it we have some gaps that we need to fill. In this particular place, this is the edge of the city. So right at this block, I just really wanted to place a couple of fancier looking residential buildings, maybe, with nothing in between them pretty much, and then continue just further towards the city with some of these very high density blocks just filled with random buildings. This is the roundabout, the exit from the highway that we have seen some time ago, and all these curved buildings around it that we are kind of going to complement today with some other structures all around them. As always, or well, as is kind of a tradition with these latest episodes, I'm not really going to be showing absolutely every single building that I'm plopping down here, because it's more of the same. I am kind of using the same buildings over and over again, but I really don't have that many of them to choose from, especially for these high density blocks. I do have a lot of low density buildings that I haven't placed anywhere in the city, but I'm kind of keeping them in store for, well, some low density areas, obviously. So all the high density places are just going to be seeing the same buildings over and over again, but I am trying to make it so that the buildings are not going to be immediately recognizable in some of these places, which is obviously helped by the fact that we are clipping them together and kind of creating new shapes with them, so that I'm kind of masking or hiding the fact that I'm recycling a lot. It's kind of impossible to do it with the large office buildings, because even if you clip something right next to them, the shape is still easily recognizable. But I'm thinking that it's still fine, because those places are kind of probably built in like a similar time period. So maybe the styles of the buildings match, or matching styles of the buildings are nothing to worry about, really. Maybe they have been built in one project or something. Maybe those gaps were filled with one office development project or something like that. Anyway, you could have seen me just run the simulation there for a second to fill the lakes. Like I said, I built 2 lakes. They're kind of divided by that main road with the tram that is going from the airport to the depot area with that transportation hub. So the lakes are kind of large. I think that one lake is significantly larger than the other one. In some next episodes, well, actually right in the next episode, I am going to continue with that landscaping and actually going to add a third lake, which is going to be closer to the runways of the airport, because I still need to do some landscaping on the very edges of the city, right? But now back for these blocks. Like I said, not really showing absolutely everything, but we are just going to quickly go through the process of this. I had a very strange bug in this area, maybe not a bug, I don't know, but basically every time I placed a building or moved something with Move It, the game kind of froze for like a second or two, and all the vehicles like slowly rearranged in the parking spots. It's kind of strange, and it's only happening in this particular spot on the map. It's really weird. I'm not really sure why that's happening. It's not exactly happening all the time, but sometimes it is, especially with Move It. It's kind of annoying, but it's not really happening anywhere else in the city. So I'm glad that we are finally done with this part, and we can, or I can start building normally again. This is going to be a tiny little detail on the side of the lake closer to the river. This is going to be basically like a tube that's going to lead to some underground piping or something, which is eventually going to make its way all the way to that plaza right next to the river. So this is the little stream that we have seen near the plaza. It's obviously not going to be connected in City Skylines. It's just a detail that there might be some kind of an outlet for the lake. I'm running the simulation again, obviously, so that the water is going to fill this area. There's always a bit of a problem with filling some of these larger bodies of water because you're going to place the source, and the water is obviously going to flow into the volume, but it's kind of going to overshoot and just flood some of the neighboring places. So I don't think I've shown it in the time lapse, or maybe you could have noticed with some of the shots there that there were some pumps, the vanilla pumps placed here and there. That's because I really wanted to just drain those areas kind of quickly. This is the tram road, like I said, the one from the airport to the depot area, and I'm just placing like a tube underneath it, like a fake tube underneath it, to make the rivers connected. And I'm also placing these rocks on the side of that road to kind of symbolize that this is an artificial thing in here, the road, and it's just an embankment that was artificially built to just divide the lakes. Or maybe they are just not lakes at all. Maybe they are not natural. Maybe they have been built here, with some kind of intention that is some kind of water reservoir for drinking water maybe, but as the city continued to grow, it just changed its purpose for some just recreation or something. It doesn't really matter. They are just looking nice, and all these little details around it are also kind of contributing to the overall feel of this area. So I really like those rocks on some of the banks there, especially on the embankment of that main road, and even some of these roads in here as well, so that again it's kind of symbolizing that they are a bit more artificially going into the lake area. I'm going to do those later in the next episode as well, in some around some roads that pretty much the same way I've used them over here. Anyway, using a lot of trees, obviously, because we are on the edge of the city. I really want to make everything that is open very green. So I'm going to be using lots of trees, especially around this hill area with that medium density residential place. And I'm also going to use the same detailing techniques to do these edges with the rocks and the retaining walls. So it's going to look like some of these places were excavated to build some of the roads around that hill area and to kind of cut away the hill and obviously just expose the rocks and do some retaining walls. Now we are moving with that residential expansion, with that high density expansion, we are moving closer towards the original public transport hub. So if you remember, I only placed that big hotel building that you can see right there, and I only placed it there because I really liked it, but I haven't really detailed much in front of it or just around it. So that's exactly what we are going to finish today. And I should have probably mentioned that this project today is going to completely finish what we have been doing right at the start of this second half of the city. So I'm actually going to show you quite a lot of cinematics at the end today, because this place, like I said, is just completely done, and it kind of deserves a tiny little overview, right? So we're going to see that. I'm also doing some of these buildings right next to the public transport hub. I'm not really sure if I did it for today's episode or maybe in some previous episodes, but I also completed the connections, the pedestrian connections to that second second platform, the second track for this railway station. I did some of these connections and just lots of detailing to really finish up this place, because after today's episode I'm just not going to return into these areas because it's going to be completely done. Doing lots of the green detailing as well, also making sure that lots of the detailing in here is the same style that we have did before, makes sense to match it together. So using, you can see that I'm just copy pasting some of the elements from the other places that we have been doing here. And even, for example, these planters, I have done something similar on the opposite side of this main road with the buses down there, and doing it exactly the same near the hotel also makes sense. I was experimenting with some larger planters in here, but eventually this is just much better. I'm just placing like lines of these planters, and then I'm randomly just deleting some of them. So making them shorter, leaving some gaps here and there, and overall just creating some interesting shape that's not exactly following any particular geometry maybe, so that it's just more interesting in the area, right? Later going to put some trees and flowers on it, so it's just going to look much better using the same poplar trees as on the opposite side as well. I really like the gravel surface in this particular area. It was definitely a good call, I think, to also make the gravel go all the way to the roads, something I haven't really done. I was kind of afraid of doing that in some previous projects. I always kind of wanted to maintain that pavement on the sides of the roads, but this definitely felt like a good thing to do because it just blends the colors together. It makes the road more look like it's just belonging into that area. I'm not really sure how to explain it better. Also, leaving one of this block open to build some sort of a park. I think I did it in some couple of places as well. Doing some of these rocks, just some very finishing touches in this area. So rocks, trees, and just some planters here and there, and lots of surface painting, obviously, and that's pretty much it. That's going to be this place completely done. Oh yeah, also finishing up the platform detailing. So these are some very small, tiny details, but like I mentioned previously, I am trying in these latest episodes to finalize the first-person views. And this is obviously going to be very much visible from the first-person view of the trains. So the ends of these platforms definitely needed to be detailed. Also doing some decals in between the tracks on the sides here, because this is kind of a closed-off area. So I'm just going to make it a bit more, worse looking with the mud and dirt and stuff. Returning back to some of the blocks that we have already finished and just filling all these gaps in here with some rocks that we have already seen with that roundabout exit from this highway, and just filling all the rest of the spaces with lots of trees, which is probably going to eat at the FPS a bit more. I think that after or before I'm building this episode, I'm not exactly sure, I have watched some videos. I think $2.20 made a video about improving your FPS, and he was talking about trees. So I downloaded the mod that shows you the trees count for all the objects that you can have in the game, and I was kind of browsing the trees that I have, and I was not really trying to do that, but apparently I do use a low trees count trees and bushes. So like I said, I was not really paying attention to that in the workshop when I downloaded them, but apparently I am using the ones that are not exactly all that heavy. So that's nice, I suppose. But I'm definitely noticing a lot of FPS drops in this area. So I'm kind of looking forward to finally move away from here. But we still have a couple of episodes before this entire district is finished. But it's not going to be that terrible anyway. This little project was something that you guys suggested. I'm not sure if you guys suggested the cable car, but you definitely suggested some sort of a hiking path with maybe a viewing area on these hills overlooking the airport maybe, but maybe even the rest of the city. So that's exactly what I wanted to do in here, and we are going to do something similar also later, because there are some elevated places around here that kind of might have some projects like this. So I'm using this tower. I'm not really sure what it is, but I'm just using it as a procedural object, kind of sinking it into the ground because I don't want to have it that tall. And it's just going to be connected with the cable car going to that tram station, which is kind of turning into a public transport hub as well, because now it's going to combine the trams, the buses, and the cable car, even though the cable car is obviously only used for some like, fun trips. It's not really intended for like a daily commute, right? It's very short as well. There's also that twisting path up the top in case some maintenance needs to go there, or something. I also placed a couple of fake those cube buildings inside that observation building, so that there is some traffic of people just moving up and down. And I also built this little hiking path around the hill here, which is purely decorative. I didn't really bother putting some like people's generators or something, so it's just going to be decoration, but it's looking nice. It's looking like it might be used by people if they decided they just want to take a little walk around this hill on the airport, or overlooking the airport maybe. Anyway, this is the before shot from the old angle. As you can see there in the background, we have all those places finished. This shot also shows some of the places that we have finished in the previous episodes, because I haven't recorded from this angle the recent progress, but the lakes were definitely visible from here, so I included it. But this is the new angle, and this is probably going to give you a better idea what exactly we did today. And yeah, it was quite a big chunk of this entire district. I can already say that there are going to be 2 more episodes that are going to be visible from this angle, let's say. And the second episode is probably going to be the larger build. It's going to also do some landscaping. So that before and after transition is going to be something to really look forward to for the next episode in Aurelia. Anyway, doing lots of these complex shots in here, because like I said, by doing all these blocks today, we finished this particular kind of like a valley of the high density buildings. We finished it with that bus terminus station. I really like how the pedestrian highway is just cutting across like that. It's finally looking really, really good. Now that I'm thinking of it, I probably should have added some more connections to the pedestrian highway, but it's probably fine. It has a very good connection on the top of that medium density hill, where there are also the bus stops, so it's perfectly fine. This definitely turned into one of my favorite places in the city, and probably the favorite place in the second half of the city that we have been doing on the opposite side of the river, and that's obviously this public transport hub. I really like the selection of buildings around it, especially the hotel finally shines in this area because of the detailing in front of it, because of the planters, and because everything around it is just done, right? So that's obviously looking very good. I really like how the trains are finally going here, and we also have the second track alive, because that's going into that second public transport hub in that depot area. So yeah, I really like it. I really like how this place is super busy at this point. So this is the opposite end of this high density place. This is obviously the edge of the city. It's the right next to the airport. It has that viewing tower and the cable cars. And I really like how the cable cars work. I don't think that a lot of people are using it actually, because even though I did put those fake buildings inside the tower, I think I made them residential, so not a lot of people are using the cable cars really, but a couple of them are. But it's nice that the cars are spawning even when no one is using them, so at least we have something moving in there. This bus terminus station is going to be very important, because that's where we are going to start that first-person ride. So that's also something to look forward to. And the first-person ride from that bus line is actually very close, because as soon as we are going to finish this place, and like I said, I think 2 episodes left in here in this area, we are going to see that ride. So that's definitely something to look forward to as well. Another shot of this area. It turned out looking good. It's actually a public transport hub as well, as it combines all these 3 public transport options. And I just especially like that intersection, the merger for the trams. I also put like a custom traffic lights there, so that the trams are going to have like a priority signal. Every time there is a tram approaching the intersection, it's going to switch red for the cars. Anyway, guys, that is all for today's episode. Thank you for watching it. If you liked it, then you can always put a thumbs up underneath it. You can subscribe to the channel if you're new here. You can also support the channel by clicking the join button below, and you can join me for my Twitch streams on Sundays. Thanks for watching, take care, and goodbye.